When ruthless land magnate Miguel Alencar arrives in the dying village of Santa Clara, he sees only profit in its destruction. At a desperate charity auction, he impulsively bids on Helena Duarte's domestic services, never imagining this quiet woman and her young son would shatter his cold, calculated world. What begins as a business arrangement becomes a journey of shocking family secrets, buried truths, and the discovery that some bonds transcend time and betrayal. In a battle between greed and redemption, Miguel must choose between the empire he's built and the family he never knew he'd lost. Before we start this story, comment below from where you are watching us. The morning sun beat down on Miguel Alencar's luxury car as it rolled through the dusty streets of Santa Clara, a once thriving rural village that now barely clung to life. At 31, Miguel had already made a name for himself as one of the country's most ruthless land magnates. His handsome face, always set in a cold expression, betrayed no emotion as he surveyed what would soon be his newest acquisition. "Look at this place," Miguel said to his assistant, Robert, who sat beside him taking notes. "Another dying town. 6 months from now, we'll have this land converted into something actually useful." Robert nodded, not daring to disagree. Everyone knew Miguel Alencar didn't care about the people who would be displaced by his business ventures. He cared about profit, nothing more. "Remind me again why we're stopping here today," Miguel asked, adjusting his expensive watch. "The paperwork isn't finalized yet." "There's some kind of charity event happening," Robert explained. "They're trying to raise money to save their school. The mayor thought you might want to see the community spirit." Miguel laughed. "Community spirit doesn't pay debts. But fine, I'm curious what desperate measures they're taking." The car pulled up to the village square, where a crowd had gathered. A makeshift stage had been set up and people were milling about nervously. Miguel stepped out of his car and heads turned. Everyone knew who he was, the man who had bought their debt, the man who would soon own everything. "Mr. Alencar," the mayor, a short, balding man named Garcia, rushed over. "We're honored you could join us today." "I was in the area," Miguel replied dismissively. "What exactly is happening here?" Mayor Garcia's smile faltered. "Well, it's a bit unusual, but our community is determined to save our school. It's the heart of Santa Clara, so we've organized a labor auction." Miguel raised an eyebrow. "Labor auction?" "Yes, people are offering their services, cooking, cleaning, farming, whatever skills they have, for 6 months. The highest bidders get their help, and all the money goes to fixing the school." Miguel scoffed. "Sounds desperate." "We do what we must for our children," Mayor Garcia said, his dignity intact despite Miguel's rudeness. Curiosity got the better of Miguel, and he decided to stay. He took a seat in the front row as the auction began. One by one, villagers stepped forward. A carpenter offering his skills, a seamstress, a baker, each selling their time to save their children's future. Miguel watched with mild amusement, occasionally bidding small amounts just to see the hopeful looks on people's faces. He had no intention of actually employing any of these people, but it amused him to play along. Then she walked onto the stage. Helena Duarte stood tall, despite her simple clothes and worn shoes. At 28, her beauty was understated but unmistakable. Dark hair pulled back from a face that showed both strength and weariness. But what caught Miguel's attention was the small boy clutching her hand. The child couldn't have been more than 7, with serious eyes that seemed too old for his young face. "Next we have Helena Duarte," announced Mayor Garcia. "Helena is offering 6 months of domestic service, cooking, cleaning, whatever is needed. She's the best cook in the village and keeps the cleanest house. The starting bid is $500. The crowd was quiet. Helena stood silently, her eyes fixed on some distant point, her dignity evident in her straight posture. $500, called out an older woman from the back. $600, said another voice. Helena remained still, only her hand moving to gently stroke her son's hair. Miguel found himself staring at this woman. Unlike the others who had come before her, she showed no desperation, no pleading in her eyes, just quiet determination. "What's the boy's name?" Miguel asked loudly, interrupting the bidding. Helena looked directly at him for the first time. "Lucas," she answered, her voice clear and steady. "My son." Something about her direct gaze irritated Miguel. He was used to people looking away from him in fear or shame. $2,000, Miguel said suddenly, not entirely sure why he was bidding. A murmur ran through the crowd. That was far more than anyone had bid for any service so far. Mayor Garcia looked shocked. "Do I hear any higher bids?" $2,000 for 6 months of Ms. Duarte's service. The square was silent. Sold to Mr. Alencar for $2,000. Helena's expression didn't change. She simply nodded, took her son's hand, and stepped down from the stage. Miguel sat back, feeling oddly unsettled. Why had he done that? He had plenty of staff already. He didn't need another housekeeper. Later, as the auction wound down, Helena approached him, Lucas still by her side. "Mr. Alencar," she said, her voice neither friendly nor hostile, "thank you for your generous bid. When would you like me to start?" Miguel studied her. Up close, he could see the faint circles under her eyes, the way her clothes had been carefully mended multiple times. "Tomorrow," he decided. "Pack your things tonight. You'll be living at my estate for the duration of your service." Helena's calm facade cracked slightly. "My son, bring him," Miguel said with a dismissive wave. "There's plenty of room." Relief crossed her face briefly before the neutral expression returned. "Thank you. We'll be ready in the morning." As Miguel drove away from Santa Clara that evening, he found himself thinking about Helena Duarte. There was something different about her, something that didn't fit with his image of the desperate villagers he so often displaced without a second thought. "Find out everything you can about Helena Duarte," he told Robert. The next morning, Helena and Lucas stood outside their small house, a single suitcase between them. The house had belonged to Helena's grandmother, and before that her great-grandmother. Soon it would belong to Miguel Alencar, along with everything else in Santa Clara. "Mama, do we have to go?" Lucas asked, his voice small. Helena knelt down to his level. "Yes, my love, but it's only for 6 months, and the money will help save your school. It's important that we keep our word. But everyone says Mr. Alencar is a bad man." Helena chose her words carefully. "People are complicated, Lucas. Mr. Alencar has made choices that have hurt our village, but we don't know his whole story." The sleek black car pulled up, and Robert stepped out. "Ms. Duarte, I'm here to take you to the Alencar estate." The drive was long and silent. Lucas stared wide-eyed as they passed through the city and then up into the hills where the wealthy lived in secluded mansions. Finally, they arrived at a massive iron gate that opened automatically to admit them. Miguel's estate was exactly what Helena had expected, ostentatious, cold, and impersonal. The main house was modern and angular, all glass and steel, with manicured gardens that looked like they'd never felt a child's footsteps. Miguel was waiting in the massive foyer when they arrived. He looked different here, more at ease in his domain, even more intimidating. "Welcome to your home for the next 6 months," he said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Robert will show you to your quarters and explain your duties." His eyes flickered to Lucas, who was half hiding behind his mother. "The boy can attend the private school down the road. I've already arranged it." Helena looked surprised. "That's very generous, but it's not generosity," Miguel cut her off. "I just don't want a child running around my house all day making noise while you're working." Helena's jaw tightened, but she simply nodded. "Thank you all the same." As Robert led them away, Miguel found himself watching Helena. There was something familiar about her that he couldn't place. It bothered him, like an itch he couldn't scratch. "Sir," Robert said when he returned, "I have the information you requested about Ms. Duarte." Miguel took the file and retreated to his office. The report was frustratingly sparse. Helena Duarte, 28, born and raised in Santa Clara. Parents unknown. She had been raised by her grandmother, now deceased. Single mother to Lucas, age 7. No criminal record, good standing in the community. Nothing remarkable, nothing to explain why he felt this strange curiosity about her. Over the next few days, Miguel found reasons to observe Helena as she worked. Unlike his other staff who scurried away when he appeared, Helena met his gaze calmly whenever their paths crossed. She performed her duties efficiently and without complaint, keeping to herself except when caring for Lucas. The boy was unusually quiet for a child his age. He spent most of his time reading books from Miguel's library. Another surprise. Miguel had never seen anyone use that room before. One evening, Miguel found Lucas sitting in the library, a book about stars open on his lap. "You like astronomy?" Miguel asked, startling the boy. Lucas nodded cautiously. "My mama says the stars are always there, even when we can't see them. Like people we've lost." Something about the boy's words struck Miguel. He had a sudden memory of sitting with his little sister on their roof, pointing out constellations their mother had taught them, before everything fell apart, before the fire that had taken his sister's life. "Your mother seems to have many sayings," Miguel said, pushing the memory away. "She's the smartest person in the whole world," Lucas said with absolute conviction. Miguel found himself smiling despite himself. "Is that so? She knows everything. And she never cries. even when things are really bad. Miguel's smile faded. And have things been bad? Lucas looked down. Sometimes. After Grandma died, we almost had to leave our house. But Mama worked 3 jobs to keep it. She didn't sleep much then. Miguel felt an unexpected pang of something like guilt. If his plans went forward, Helena and Lucas would lose their home anyway, despite her sacrifices. Later that night, Miguel was working late in his office when he heard soft footsteps in the hallway. He opened his door to see Helena, checking on Lucas in one of the spare bedrooms. "Is everything all right?" he asked. Helena jumped slightly. "Yes, sir. Lucas has nightmares sometimes. I was just making sure he's sleeping well." In the dim light, with her guard down, Helena looked younger, more vulnerable. Miguel found himself wanting to know more about her. "Your son is very bright," he said. "He seems to enjoy the library." A small smile touched Helena's lips. "He loves books. I've tried to teach him that education is the one thing no one can take away from you." The words felt like an accusation, though Miguel knew she hadn't meant them that way. "And his father?" Miguel asked before he could stop himself. Helena's expression closed off immediately. "Not in the picture. It's been just Lucas and me since he was born." "I see." An awkward silence fell between them. Miguel was unused to feeling uncomfortable in his own home, and it irritated him. "Good night, Ms. Duarte," he said finally, retreating to his office. The days passed, and despite himself, Miguel found his curiosity about Helena growing. She was different from what he had expected, proud without being defiant, hard-working without being servile. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were thoughtful and direct. And Lucas, the boy, was a surprise as well. Intelligent and observant, he sometimes asked questions that caught Miguel off guard. Questions about why some people had so much while others had so little. Questions that Miguel had stopped asking himself long ago. One evening, about 2 weeks after Helena and Lucas had arrived, Miguel returned home earlier than usual. He found Helena in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "Where's Lucas?" he asked. "Doing his homework," Helena replied. "He loves that school you arranged. Thank you for that." Miguel waved away her thanks. "It was convenient, nothing more." Helena looked at him directly. "You don't like people thinking you've done something kind, do you, Mr. Alencar?" The question startled him. "I'm a businessman, Miss Duarte. Kindness doesn't enter into it. Everyone has kindness in them," she said, turning back to her cooking. "Even you." Miguel felt strangely defensive. "You don't know me." "No," Helena agreed, "but I know that you could have turned us away after the auction. You didn't need another housekeeper. Yet here we are." Miguel had no response to that. He hadn't examined his own motives too closely. It had been an impulse, nothing more. That night, after Helena and Lucas had gone to bed, Miguel found himself drawn to the small suite where they were staying. The door to their sitting room was slightly ajar, and Helena's worn suitcase sat open on a chair. Without fully understanding why, Miguel stepped into the room and approached the suitcase. Perhaps there was something inside that would explain why this woman and her son had gotten under his skin so quickly. He rifled through the neatly folded clothes, feeling like an intruder in his own home. At the bottom of the case, he found a small cloth bag. Inside was a faded photograph of a little girl, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, with a familiar smile. His heart stopped. The girl looked exactly like his sister, the sister who had died in the fire 20 years ago. But how was that possible? His hands shaking now, Miguel reached back into the bag and pulled out a wrinkled, tear-stained letter. It was addressed simply, "To my son, Miguel." He recognized his mother's handwriting immediately. The letter was dated just days before her death, years after the fire that had supposedly claimed his sister's life. The first lines made his blood run cold. "My dearest Miguel, if you are reading this, then you found her at last. Your sister didn't die in the fire as you were told. She survived, but your uncle sent her away." Miguel sank to the floor, the letter clutched in his hand. Everything he had believed about his past was a lie. His sister hadn't died. She had been sent away just as he had been sent to live with his wealthy uncle. And Helena, could she be his sister's daughter? Was Lucas his own blood? A sound at the door made him look up. Helena stood there, her eyes wide with shock as she saw what he held in his hands. "Why were you looking through my things?" she asked, her voice trembling. Miguel stared at her, the photo now folded in his pocket. And he said, voice cracking, "Because I think I already failed you once." Helena stepped into the room, her face pale in the dim light. "What do you mean you failed me once? And why are you going through my things?" Miguel stood slowly, the letter still clutched in his hand. His mind was racing, trying to process what he'd just discovered. This woman standing before him, Could she really be his niece? Was Lucas truly his blood relation? "This letter," Miguel said, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. "It's from my mother." Helena's eyes widened. "That's impossible. That letter belonged to my mother. It was given to her by her birth mother before she died." "Your mother's name," Miguel said urgently. "What was it?" Helena hesitated, confusion written across her face. "Maria Duarte. But she was adopted by the Duarte family when she was a child. She never knew her birth parents' names." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know about this letter? Why do you have it?" Miguel sank into a nearby chair, suddenly feeling the weight of 20 years of lies. "The letter is addressed to me. I'm Miguel Alencar. And if what this letter says is true, your mother Maria was my sister. The sister I thought died in a fire when we were children." Helena stared at him in disbelief. That's not possible. "I need to tell you a story," Miguel said. "Please, sit down." Reluctantly, Helena perched on the edge of the bed, as far from Miguel as possible. Her eyes never left the letter in his hands. "When I was 11 years old," Miguel began, "there was a fire in our family home. My father had died the year before, and my mother was struggling to keep us afloat. That night I was pulled from the burning house by firefighters. They told me my little sister had died in the flames." He paused, the memories still painful after all these years. "I was sent to live with my uncle, my father's brother, who was wealthy but cold. He raised me to be like him, to care only about business and profit. I believed for 20 years that my sister had died that night." Miguel unfolded the letter with trembling hands. "But according to this, she survived. My uncle separated us deliberately. He sent her to live with distant relatives, the Duartes apparently, and told me she was dead." Helena shook her head. "Why would he do something so cruel?" "Money," Miguel said bitterly. "Always money. My father had a life insurance policy that paid out to his children. My uncle became my guardian and controlled my portion. If my sister was dead, her portion would have come to me as well, under his control until I came of age." "So he stole from you both and tore apart your family," Helena said, her voice tight with anger. "Yes, and I became just like him." Miguel looked up at Helena, really seeing her for the first time. "Your mother, Maria, she passed away?" Helena nodded, her eyes growing sad. 5 years ago. Cancer. She never knew anything about her birth family, except for that letter, which she found among her adoptive mother's things after she died. All she knew was that she had a brother somewhere. "And your grandmother, the one who raised you in Santa Clara? She was my adoptive grandmother, Maria's adoptive mother. She took me in after my mother died." Miguel closed his eyes briefly. "So, Lucas is my great-nephew, the only blood family I have left." The realization hung in the air between them. Helena stood abruptly. "I need time to process this," she said. "It's too much." "Of course," Miguel replied. "But Helena, please don't leave. Not yet. I've just found you both." Helena looked at him, her expression guarded. "We still have a contract, Mr. Alencar. I'll honor my commitment, but this doesn't change who you are or what you're doing to Santa Clara, to our home." With that, she left the room, closing the door firmly behind her. Miguel remained seated, the letter still in his hands. For the first time in years, he felt something crack within his carefully constructed armor. Helena was right. This revelation didn't erase who he had become or the people he had hurt along the way, including, it seemed, his own family. The next morning, breakfast was a tense affair. Lucas, oblivious to the dramatic revelation of the night before, chatted about his school projects, while Helena avoided Miguel's gaze. Miguel found himself watching the boy, his sister's grandson, his own great-nephew, with new eyes. The resemblance to his sister was there, now that he knew to look for it. "Lucas," Miguel said suddenly, interrupting the boy's story about his science class, "how would you like to see my company today? I could show you around the office." Lucas's eyes lit up. "Really? Can I, Mom?" Helena looked startled. "I'm not sure that's a good idea." "Please, Mom," Lucas pleaded. "I've never seen a real office before." Helena hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "All right, but you need to be on your best behavior." "Yes!" Lucas pumped his fist in the air. "Can I wear my special shirt, Mom? The one with the collar?" Despite herself, Helena smiled. "Yes, go get ready." After Lucas ran off, silence fell between Helena and Miguel. "Why are you doing this?" Helena asked finally. Miguel considered the question. "Because he's family. Because I want to know him. And because I want you both to understand who I am now, not just who I was when I came to Santa Clara. The man who came to Santa Clara is still planning to destroy our village. Helena pointed out. Has that changed overnight? Miguel had no answer. The Santa Clara development was one of his biggest projects yet. Turning the struggling village into an exclusive resort community would make him millions. But now, knowing that Santa Clara was where his sister's daughter had grown up, where his great-nephew had his roots, it complicated things in ways he hadn't anticipated. The day at Miguel's office was eye-opening for Lucas. The boy asked intelligent questions and charmed everyone he met. Even Miguel's hardened executives couldn't help smiling at Lucas's enthusiasm and curiosity. In one meeting, when Miguel was discussing the Santa Clara project, Lucas spoke up unexpectedly. "But what will happen to all the people who live there?" he asked innocently. "Where will they go?" The executives looked uncomfortable. Miguel found himself unable to give his usual dismissive answer about progress and economic necessity. "That's a complicated question, Lucas," he said instead. "Sometimes change is difficult for everyone involved." "But it's not fair," Lucas persisted. "Santa Clara is our home. My friends are there. Our house is there." Miguel glanced at Helena, who was watching her son with pride despite her evident embarrassment at his outburst. "You're right," Miguel said finally. "It's not fair, and that's something I need to think more about." Later, as they drove back to the estate, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat. Helena sat beside Miguel in the front, looking out the window. "He made quite an impression today," Miguel said quietly. "Lucas has always been special that way," Helena replied. "He sees things clearly without all the complications adults create to justify their actions." "Like me," Miguel acknowledged. Helena turned to look at him. "Yes, like you." "I never meant to hurt you," Miguel said after a moment. "Even before I knew who you were, the auction, I didn't think about what it would mean for you to leave your home to work for someone like me." "Someone like you?" Helena repeated. Cold, calculating, the villain in everyone's story. Helena was quiet for a long moment. "My mother used to tell me that no one is all good or all bad, that people become who they are because of what they've lived through. What did you live through, Miguel, that made you so determined to succeed at any cost?" The question hit Miguel hard. No one had asked him that in years, not since he'd built his walls so high that no one dared to look beyond them. "After I lost my family, my uncle taught me that emotions were a weakness," he said finally. "That attachments only led to pain. He raised me to believe that the only measure of a man's worth was his success, his power, and I was a good student." "And were you happy? Are you happy now?" Helena asked. Miguel had never really considered the question. "I was satisfied, accomplished. That seemed enough." "And now?" Miguel glanced in the rearview mirror at Lucas, sleeping peacefully. "Now I don't know." When they arrived back at the estate, Helena carried the sleeping Lucas to his bedroom. Miguel watched from the doorway as she gently tucked him in, brushing his hair back from his forehead with such tenderness that it made Miguel's chest ache. "He looks like her," Miguel said softly as Helena joined him in the hallway. "My sister." "Around the eyes." Helena nodded. "My mother had those same eyes. I used to think Lucas got them from her, but I guess they came from even further back." "Would you tell me about her?" Miguel asked. "About Maria? What was she like?" Something in Helena's expression softened. "She was the strongest person I've ever known, kind but fierce when it came to protecting those she loved. She worked as a teacher in Santa Clara. She believed education was the path to a better life. That's why the school means so much to you," Miguel realized. Yes, it was her life's work. She taught there for 15 years before she got sick. Miguel felt a wave of shame wash over him. He had been planning to demolish the school his sister had dedicated her life to, all for the sake of profit. "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling strange and inadequate on his tongue. "For everything." Helena studied his face as if searching for the truth behind his words. "I believe you are. But being sorry isn't the same as making things right." "How can I make things right?" Miguel asked. "That depends on what kind of man you really are," Helena replied. "The one your uncle created or the one your mother wrote that letter to, the one she believed would find his sister someday and make things right." With that, she turned and went to her own room, leaving Miguel alone with his thoughts. Over the next few days, Miguel found himself spending more time with Lucas. The boy's natural curiosity and openness began to chip away at the walls Miguel had built around himself. Together they explored the estate grounds, built model airplanes and even baked cookies under Helena's watchful eye. Helena remained more guarded, but Miguel noticed her watching their interactions with a mixture of caution and hope. He caught her smiling sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking, when Lucas made him laugh or when Miguel patiently explained something to the boy. One evening, Miguel invited Helena to join him in his study after Lucas had gone to bed. "I want to show you something," he said, pulling out a thick folder labeled Santa Clara Development. Helena tensed. "Is this where you tell me your plans for destroying our village haven't changed?" "Just look," Miguel urged. Reluctantly, Helena opened the folder. Inside were the original plans for the resort development, showing the demolition of most of the village, including the school and Helena's home. But paper-clipped to these were new sketches, rough drawings showing a revised plan. "I've been working on this for the past week," Miguel explained. "The resort can be built on the eastern edge of the village land, the area that's mostly abandoned already. The existing village can be revitalized instead of demolished. The school would be renovated and expanded, not destroyed." Helena looked up, her expression cautious. "Why would you do this? You'd make less money." "Yes," Miguel acknowledged, "but some things are more important than maximum profit. I'm beginning to remember that." "This would save Santa Clara," Helena said, her voice thick with emotion. "It would save your home," Miguel corrected, "your mother's school, Lucas's heritage." Helena traced the outline of the school on the new plans. "Why show me this now? These aren't finalized." "Because I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change," Miguel said honestly. "I can't undo the past, all the communities I've displaced, the lives I've disrupted. But I can try to do better moving forward." Helena was quiet for a long moment. "My mother would have appreciated this," she said finally. "She always believed people could change if given the chance." "Do you believe that?" Miguel asked. Helena met his gaze directly. "I'm starting to." The moment was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Miguel frowned, checking his watch. "I'm not expecting anyone at this hour." They both went to the foyer, where Robert was attempting to block a well-dressed woman from entering. "Miguel!" the woman exclaimed when she saw him. "Tell this man to let me in. This is ridiculous." Miguel's expression hardened. "Diane, what are you doing here?" Diane pushed past Robert, her expensive perfume filling the air. "I came to see why you've been ignoring my calls. The board is concerned about the sudden changes to the Santa Clara project." Her eyes fell on Helena, taking in her simple clothes and the flour still on her hands from the evening's baking. "And who is this? New staff?" Miguel stepped forward. "This is Helena Duarte. She's—" He hesitated, looking at Helena. "I work for Mr. Alencar," Helena said, her pride evident in her straight posture despite Diane's dismissive glance. "How quaint," Diane said with a cold smile. "Miguel, we need to talk privately about business matters." "Helena, would you excuse us?" Miguel asked. Helena nodded and turned to leave, but not before Miguel saw the hurt in her eyes. He had just begun to break down the walls between them, and now Diane's appearance threatened to undo all that progress. "What's this about?" Miguel demanded once Helena was gone. "Your uncle called me," Diane said, making herself comfortable on the sofa. "He's concerned about your recent behavior, canceling meetings, proposing changes to a project we've spent months planning, and now I find you here playing house with the help." "My personal life is none of your concern," Miguel said coldly. "Or my uncle's." Diane laughed. "Of course it is. The Alencar Group is about to go public. Investors need stability, not a CEO who's suddenly developed a conscience. Your uncle built this company on tough decisions. He wouldn't let sentimentality get in the way of business. My uncle is no longer in charge," Miguel reminded her, "and the changes to the Santa Clara project are my decision." "A decision the board can override," Diane countered. "Don't forget who your allies are, Miguel. That woman upstairs, she's nothing. She doesn't belong in your world." Miguel felt a surge of anger. "You don't know anything about her." Diane stood, smoothing her designer dress. "I know her type. She sees a wealthy man and dollar signs appear in her eyes. Don't be naive." "You need to leave," Miguel said, his voice dangerously low. "Fine, but think carefully about what you're doing, Miguel. Your uncle and the board won't stand for these changes, and I won't stand by while you throw away everything we've built together." After she left, Miguel poured himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly. Diane's words had hit a nerve. For years, he had valued her ruthless business sense, her unwavering focus on profit above all else. They had been the perfect team, both personally and professionally, until now. He looked up to see Helena standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry about that," he said. "Diane is complicated." "Your girlfriend?" Helena asked, her face unreadable. "Ex-girlfriend, business partner." Miguel sighed. "Someone who thinks like I used to think." Helena nodded slowly. "She's right about one thing. I don't belong in your world." "Helena," Miguel began, but she held up a hand. "It's fine. I know what I am to you now. family by an accident of fate, but that doesn't change who we are or where we come from. You're wrong, Miguel said, setting down his glass and walking toward her. Finding out we're family didn't create a connection between us. It just explained one that was already forming. From the moment you stepped onto that auction stage, something about you called to me. Now I know why. Helena took a step back. Miguel, don't. Don't what? Tell you that you've changed me. That watching you with Lucas has made me question everything I thought I knew about what matters in life. Don't say things you don't mean, Helena replied. Your ex-girlfriend is right. Your board won't accept these changes to the Santa Clara project. And when the time comes to choose between your business empire and doing the right thing, I know which one you'll pick. You don't know me as well as you think, Miguel said quietly. Helena's eyes filled with tears. I hope you're right. For Lucas's sake, for Santa Clara's sake, I hope you're right. She turned to leave, but Miguel caught her hand. The touch sent a current of electricity through them both, and Helena froze. I'm trying to change, Miguel said, his voice rough with emotion. I can't promise I'll get it right, but I'm trying. Helena looked down at their joined hands. I know, she whispered. That's what scares me. Their eyes met, and for a moment the space between them seemed to crackle with unspoken feelings. Then Helena gently pulled her hand away. Good night, Miguel, she said softly, and walked away, leaving Miguel to wonder if he had the courage to become the man she needed him to be, the man he was beginning to want to be. The morning after Diane's unexpected visit, Miguel sat at his desk reviewing the latest financial reports for the Santa Clara project. The numbers were clear. His new plan would cut profits by nearly 30%. The board would never approve it without a fight. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his uncle, Victor Alencar. Miguel, Victor's cold voice came through the speaker. I understand you're making changes to the Santa Clara development. Miguel tensed. News travels fast. Diane was concerned enough to call me directly. What's going on? This isn't like you. I'm exploring alternatives that would preserve part of the village, Miguel said carefully. Victor's laugh was harsh. Since when do you care about preserving anything? You've built your reputation on tearing down the old to make way for the new. Maybe it's time for a different approach. This is about that woman, isn't it? Victor asked. Diane mentioned you had someone from Santa Clara working in your house now. Miguel's grip tightened on the phone. Her name is Helena Duarte. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Duarte, Victor repeated slowly. Why does that name sound familiar? Miguel felt a chill run down his spine. If Victor made the connection to Maria Duarte, to the past they had both worked so hard to bury. It's a common name, Miguel said dismissively. Listen, Uncle, I appreciate your concern, but the Santa Clara project is my decision. The board meeting is next week. I'll present my plans then. Miguel, Victor's voice hardened. Don't throw away everything we've built because of some sentimental attachment to a village nobody cares about, or to a woman who's clearly manipulating you. Miguel felt his temper rising. You don't know anything about her. I don't need to. I've seen this before. You're smart about everything except women who play on your emotions. Like my mother? Miguel asked coldly. Another long pause. Your mother was weak. She couldn't make the hard decisions necessary for survival. Don't follow her path. Goodbye, Uncle, Miguel said, ending the call before he said something he might regret. He sat back in his chair, troubled by the conversation. Victor had always been the voice of cold reason in his life, teaching him to push aside emotions and focus solely on business. For 20 years, Miguel had followed that path without question. Now he wasn't so sure it was the right one. Later that day, Miguel returned home early to find Helena and Lucas in the kitchen. They were baking together, flour dusting their clothes and laughter filling the air. For a moment, Miguel stood in the doorway watching them. They looked happy, carefree, everything he had never allowed himself to be. Lucas spotted him first. Miguel, come help us make cookies. Helena turned, her smile fading slightly when she saw Miguel. Since their conversation the night before, a new tension had emerged between them, something neither was ready to acknowledge. I don't know how to bake, Miguel admitted, stepping into the kitchen. Mom can teach you, Lucas said confidently. She can teach anyone anything. Helena wiped her hands on a towel. It's just sugar cookies. Even beginners can manage. Miguel removed his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. Show me what to do. For the next hour, Miguel forgot about business reports and board meetings. Under Helena's patient guidance, he measured flour, cracked eggs, and even tried his hand at decorating. Lucas chatted excitedly about his day at school, treating Miguel like he had always been part of their lives. You're not very good at this, Lucas observed as Miguel struggled to ice a cookie in a straight line. Lucas, Helena admonished, but Miguel laughed. He's right, I'm terrible. I've never done this before. Lucas looked surprised. Never? Not even when you were a kid? Miguel's smile faded. No. After my parents died, there wasn't much time for things like baking cookies. Helena's expression softened. Well, now you know how it's never too late to learn new things. Their eyes met over Lucas's head, and Miguel felt something shift between them, a moment of understanding that transcended their complicated circumstances. The moment was broken by Robert's appearance in the doorway. Mr. Alencar, Mr. Victor Alencar is here to see you. Miguel stiffened. My uncle is here. Now? Helena quickly began wiping flour from Lucas's face. We should go upstairs. No, Miguel said firmly. This is your home too, for now at least. You don't need to hide. He walked to the foyer, where Victor stood examining a painting on the wall with critical eyes. At 65, Victor Alencar was still an imposing figure, tall, lean, with silver hair, and the same cold eyes Miguel saw in the mirror every morning, or used to, before Helena and Lucas came into his life. Uncle, Miguel greeted him. This is unexpected. Victor turned. I was concerned after our call, and I wanted to see for myself what's going on here. His gaze moved past Miguel to where Helena and Lucas now stood in the hallway. So this is her. The way he said it made Miguel's jaw clench. This is Helena Duarte and her son, Lucas. They're staying here while Helena fulfills a work contract. Victor studied Helena with narrow eyes. Duarte, he repeated, from Santa Clara. Helena stepped forward, her chin raised. Yes, my family has lived there for generations. All generations? Victor asked pointedly. Miguel saw a flicker of understanding in Helena's eyes. She knew exactly who Victor was, the man who had separated Miguel from his sister, her mother. My mother was adopted by the Duartes when she was a child, Helena said, her voice steady. After she was separated from her birth family, Victor's face paled slightly. I see. Lucas, Helena said, turning to her son, why don't you go wash up before dinner? Once Lucas had gone upstairs, Victor's demeanor changed completely. What do you think you're doing, Miguel? He hissed. Have you lost your mind? I know everything, Uncle, Miguel said quietly. About the fire, about my sister, about how you separated us and told me she was dead. Victor's eyes darted to Helena. Whatever this woman has told you, I found our mother's letter, Miguel interrupted, the one she wrote before she died, explaining how you sent Maria away to the Duartes and kept me because you could control my inheritance. Victor's face hardened. You were always the smarter one, the stronger one. Your sister was weak, like your mother. I did what was necessary. Necessary? Helena broke in, her voice shaking with anger. You tore apart a family. You lied to a child, told him his sister was dead. All for money. I built an empire, Victor snapped. I took a frightened, grieving boy and turned him into a man who commands respect, who has power. Would you rather have grown up in poverty, Miguel? Struggling like your mother was? I would rather have had my sister, Miguel said softly. I would rather have known the truth. Victor laughed bitterly. And now you do. So what? Are you going to throw away everything I built for you? Everything you've achieved for what? Some misplaced sense of family loyalty to people you barely know. Miguel looked at Helena, seeing in her face echoes of the sister he had lost, the mother he barely remembered. They're my family. I'm your family, Victor shouted. I raised you. I made you who you are. Yes, Miguel agreed. You did. And now I'm choosing to be someone else. Victor's face contorted with rage. You're making a mistake that will cost you everything. The board meeting is in 3 days. If you go forward with these changes to the Santa Clara project, I'll make sure the board removes you as CEO. You don't have that power anymore, Miguel said calmly. Don't I? Victor smiled coldly. You think the board will choose you over me? The man who founded the company, who still holds 20% of the shares. I hold 30%, Miguel countered. And the board respects results. My results. We'll see. Victor turned to leave, then paused to look at Helena. You look just like your grandmother, you know. Same stubborn expression, same misplaced pride. He glanced back at Miguel. She'll ruin you, just like your mother nearly ruined your father before he wisely put his business in my hands. After Victor left, a heavy silence filled the house. Miguel stood motionless in the foyer, his uncle's words echoing in his mind. Are you all right? Helena asked quietly, coming to stand beside him. I'm fine, Miguel said automatically, then sighed. No, I'm not. He's right about one thing. If I go forward with the new Santa Clara plans, I could lose control of the company. Would that be so terrible? Helena asked. You'd still be wealthy, you'd still have your life. Miguel looked at her. My company is my life. It's all I've ever had. Something like disappointment flickered in Helena's eyes. Then maybe your uncle didn't lie about everything. Maybe he did succeed in making you just like him. She turned to walk away, but Miguel caught her arm. That's not fair. Isn't it? Helena challenged. You're standing here telling me that your company means more to you than doing the right thing. That profits matter more than people's lives and homes. I didn't say that, Miguel protested. You didn't have to. Helena pulled her arm free. I need to check on Lucas. Left alone, Miguel poured himself a drink and tried to sort through his conflicting emotions. Everything had seemed so clear before Helena and Lucas came into his life. Success was measured in profits, in deals closed, in competitors crushed. Now, nothing was simple anymore. The next morning, Miguel rose early and drove to Santa Clara alone. He needed to see the village again, this time with new eyes. Not as a business opportunity, but as the place his sister had called home, the place where her daughter had grown up, where his great-nephew had been born. The village was quiet in the early morning light. A few shopkeepers were opening their stores, a couple of elderly men sat on a bench in the square, and children made their way to the school that Helena's mother had worked so hard to maintain. Miguel parked his car and walked to Helena's small house. It was modest but well kept, with faded blue shutters and a small garden out front. This was his sister's legacy, not wealth or power, but a home filled with love, a daughter raised with principles, a grandson who saw the world with clear, compassionate eyes. Mr. Alencar? Miguel turned to see Mayor Garcia approaching, his expression guarded. What brings you back to Santa Clara? The auction is long over. I wanted to see the village again, Miguel said. Really see it this time. Mayor Garcia looked skeptical. Has something changed? Miguel wasn't sure how to answer. Maybe. I'm considering alternatives for the development project. Hope flickered in the mayor's eyes. Alternatives that might spare the village? Possibly, Miguel said cautiously. I can't make any promises yet. That would mean everything to our community, Mayor Garcia said. This village may not look like much to someone like you, but it's home to generations of families. We have history here. I'm beginning to understand that, Miguel admitted. More than you know. As Miguel continued his walk through Santa Clara, he found himself seeing the village as Helena must see it, not as a failing business venture, but as a community of people who cared for one another, who had history and connections that money couldn't buy. He paused outside the school watching children play in the yard. Some part of him wondered if his sister had been happy here, if she had found the family with the Duartes that Victor had stolen from her, from them both. Back at his estate that evening, Miguel found Helena in the library, reading quietly while Lucas did his homework. She looked up when he entered, her expression questioning. I went to Santa Clara today, Miguel said without preamble. I saw your house, the school. Helena set down her book. Why? I needed to see it differently, not as a business opportunity, but as a home. Your home, my sister's home. Lucas looked up from his homework. Are you going to save our village, Miguel? The innocent question hung in the air between them. Helena watched Miguel carefully, as if his answer would tell her everything she needed to know about who he truly was. I'm going to try, Miguel said finally. But it won't be easy. There are people who will fight against it. Like your uncle? Lucas asked. Miguel nodded. Yes, like my uncle. Helena sent Lucas to finish his homework in his room, then turned to Miguel. What changed your mind? You did, Miguel said simply. You and Lucas. Seeing how much Santa Clara means to you both, realizing that if things had been different, if Victor hadn't separated us, I might have grown up there too, with my sister, with a real family. Helena's expression softened. It's not too late, you know, for family. Miguel took a step closer to her. What do you mean? Lucas adores you, Helena said. And I... She hesitated, clearly struggling with her feelings. I've seen the man you could be, beneath all those walls you've built. The man who bakes cookies with a 7-year-old. The man who's willing to risk his company to save a village he once planned to destroy. I don't know if I can be that man all the time, Miguel admitted. I've spent 20 years being someone else. Helena reached out and touched his cheek gently. You already are that man. You just need to stop fighting it. The touch of her hand sent warmth spreading through Miguel's chest. Without thinking, he covered her hand with his own, holding it against his face. They stood like that for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then Helena slowly pulled her hand away. The board meeting is tomorrow? Miguel nodded. Yes, where I'll either save Santa Clara or lose my company. Maybe both. Whatever happens, Helena said quietly, Lucas and I will be here when you get back. Miguel held her gaze. Promise me. Helena nodded. I promise. Later that night, as Miguel prepared for bed, his phone rang. It was Diane. Miguel, we need to talk, she said without greeting. Your uncle has been meeting with board members all day. He's convincing them to vote against your new proposal. Miguel sighed. I expected as much. There's more, Diane said, her voice unusually hesitant. He's been digging into Helena Duarte's background. I don't know what he's found, but he seems confident it will force your hand. A cold feeling settled in Miguel's stomach. Thanks for the warning. After hanging up, Miguel stood at his window, looking out at the night sky. The stars were bright and clear, reminding him of what Lucas had said, that the stars were like people we've lost, always there even when we can't see them. His sister had been like that, alive all these years, though he couldn't see her. And now her daughter and grandson were here, offering him a chance at the family he'd thought was lost forever. Could he really risk everything for them? For a village he barely knew? The old Miguel, Victor's Miguel, would say no. Business came first, always. But the man he was becoming, the man Helena saw beneath his carefully constructed facade, had a different answer. With newfound resolve, Miguel turned from the window. Tomorrow would determine not just the fate of Santa Clara, but the kind of man he would choose to be for the rest of his life. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and bright. Miguel dressed carefully in his most expensive suit, armor for the battle ahead. As he adjusted his tie, he caught sight of a family photo on his dresser, him as a child with his parents and his sister. For years, he had kept it face down, the memories too painful to confront. Now he placed it upright, drawing strength from the smiling faces. Downstairs, Helena was helping Lucas with his breakfast. They both looked up when Miguel entered the kitchen. You look like a superhero, Lucas said admiringly. Miguel smiled despite his nerves. I don't know about that. Are you ready? Helena asked quietly. As ready as I'll ever be, Miguel replied. He hesitated, then added, whatever happens today, I want you both to know that meeting you has changed me. For the better, I think. Helena's eyes softened. We'll be here when you get back. Miguel reached out and squeezed her hand briefly. Then, with one last look at his newfound family, he headed for the most important meeting of his life. The Alencar Group headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in the heart of the city. As Miguel rode the elevator to the boardroom, he mentally prepared his arguments, his defenses against what he knew would be Victor's ruthless attack. The board members were already seated when Miguel arrived, 12 men and women who controlled the fate of his company, and now the fate of Santa Clara. Victor sat at the far end of the table, his expression coldly confident. Diane was beside him, not meeting Miguel's eyes. Now that we're all here, Victor began, I've called this emergency meeting to address some concerning developments regarding the Santa Clara project. Miguel took his seat at the head of the table. Before we begin, I'd like to present my revised proposal for Santa Clara. Victor's smile was thin. I think the board should hear some relevant information first. Miguel tensed as Victor distributed folders to each board member. What you're looking at, Victor explained, is evidence that Miguel's judgment has been compromised. He is allowing personal feelings to interfere with business decisions that affect this company's profitability. The board members murmured as they reviewed the contents of the folders. Miguel opened his own copy and felt his blood run cold. Inside were photos of him with Helena and Lucas, at his office, at home, walking in the garden. There were also copies of Helena's employment contract from the auction, and, most damning of all, a copy of his mother's letter. Miguel has been concealing a personal relationship with a resident of Santa Clara, Victor continued smoothly. A woman whose family has connections to our own. This woman has clearly influenced him to abandon a project that would have generated millions in profit. Is this true, Miguel? Asked Margaret Wilson, the longest-serving board member. Is this woman related to you? Miguel took a deep breath. Yes and no. Helena Duarte is my niece, the daughter of my sister, who I was told died in a fire 20 years ago. I only discovered this connection recently. Shocked murmurs filled the room. And you didn't think this was information the board should have? Asked another member. I was still processing it myself, Miguel admitted. But yes, I should have been more transparent. Victor leaned forward. The point is, Miguel is making decisions based on emotion, not business. The revised Santa Clara plan would reduce our projected profits by 30%, all to save a village that has no economic value. That's not entirely true, Miguel countered, pulling out his own presentation materials. I've spent the past week developing an alternative that would preserve the village while still creating a profitable resort. For the next 30 minutes, Miguel outlined his new vision, a resort that would incorporate the village as a cultural attraction, preserving its history while bringing in tourism and jobs. The school would be renovated and expanded, becoming a centerpiece of community education programs sponsored by the Alencar Group. This approach actually opens up new tax incentives and government grants for historical preservation, Miguel explained. The initial profits may be lower, but the long-term sustainability and public relations benefits are substantial. Several board members looked intrigued, but Victor wasn't finished. This is all very touching, he said sarcastically. But the fact remains that Miguel has allowed a personal relationship to cloud his judgment. Furthermore, I have reason to believe he's being manipulated. Victor pulled out another document. This is a report from a private investigator. Helena Duarte has a history of financial problems. She's been facing foreclosure on her home in Santa Clara. Convenient, isn't it, that she suddenly finds a wealthy relative just when she needs money the most? Miguel felt anger rising in him. That's absurd. Helena never asked me for money. She didn't even know we were related when she came to work for me. So she says, Victor replied smoothly. But the timing is suspicious, don't you think? Her village is about to be demolished, her home foreclosed, and suddenly she's living in your mansion and you're changing multi-million-dollar business plans. Miguel looked around the table, seeing doubt in the board members' eyes. He needed to change tactics. Let me ask you all something, he said, standing up. What is the purpose of the Alencar Group? Is it just to make money regardless of the human cost, or do we have a responsibility to the communities we impact? Our responsibility is to our shareholders, Victor interrupted. And what about our responsibility to ourselves, Miguel countered. To being people we can be proud of. I've spent years following my uncle's philosophy. That business comes first, that emotions are weakness, that people are expendable. And yes, it made us rich. But at what cost? Miguel walked around the table, making eye contact with each board member. I'm not asking you to choose between profit and people. I'm offering a way to serve both. My revised plan still makes money, just not quite as much, quite as fast. But it lets us sleep at night knowing we didn't destroy lives to build another resort that looks just like all our others. Margaret Wilson studied Miguel carefully. You've changed, Miguel. I've watched you bulldoze through projects without a second thought about the people affected. What's different now? Miguel smiled slightly. I remembered who I was before my uncle taught me to be someone else. I remembered what my mother valued: family, community, doing the right thing even when it's hard. Victor slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous sentimentality. We are not a charity. We are a business. We can be both, Miguel insisted. We can make money while making a positive difference. The question is, what kind of company do we want to be? For a long moment, silence filled the boardroom. Then Margaret spoke. I'd like to hear more about these tax incentives in the revised plan. One by one, the board members began asking questions about Miguel's proposal. Victor watched in growing anger as the tide turned against him. This is absurd, he finally snapped. If you approve this plan, I'll sell my shares, all of them. The threat hung in the air. Victor's 20% stake, if sold all at once, could cause the company's stock to plummet. Miguel met his uncle's eyes. I'll buy them. Victor laughed. You don't have that kind of liquid capital. I'll get it, Miguel said confidently. And if necessary, I'll sell some of my own shares to trusted investors who share our new vision. Victor's face reddened with fury. After everything I did for you, everything I taught you, this is how you repay me. You separated me from my sister, Miguel said quietly. You lied to me for 20 years. You taught me to value money over people. That's not a debt I want to repay. In the end, the board voted 8-4 in favor of Miguel's revised Santa Clara plan. Victor stormed out, followed by Diane and 2 board members loyal to him. The remaining members congratulated Miguel on his presentation. You've given us a lot to think about, Margaret said as they left. I'm interested to see where this new direction takes us. Exhausted but victorious, Miguel returned to his office. He had just poured himself a celebratory drink when Diane appeared in his doorway. Quite a performance, she said coolly. Miguel gestured to the chair across from him. I meant every word. Diane remained standing. Victor is furious. He's already called his lawyer about selling his shares. Let him. I meant what I said. I'll buy them if necessary. Diane studied him. You really have changed. This woman, Helena, She must be quite special. Miguel smiled slightly. She is, but this isn't just about her. It's about who I want to be, who I should have been all along. Well, Diane said, adjusting her designer purse on her shoulder, I hope it's worth it. Victor won't stop until he makes you pay for this humiliation. I know, Miguel acknowledged, but for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of him. After Diane left, Miguel sat quietly, processing the events of the day. He had won the battle, but there would be more to come. Victor wouldn't give up easily, yet somehow, the challenges ahead didn't seem as daunting as they would have just weeks ago. With renewed purpose, Miguel picked up his phone and made a call. Mayor Garcia, it's Miguel Alencar. I have some news about Santa Clara. The sun was setting when Miguel finally returned home. The house was quiet as he entered, but a light shone from the kitchen. He found Helena there, sitting alone at the table, a cup of tea cooling before her. You're back, she said, rising. How did it go? We won, Miguel said simply. The board approved the new plan. Santa Clara will be preserved, including the school and your house. Helena's eyes filled with tears. Really? You really did it? Miguel nodded. There will be changes. New businesses, tourism, development around the edges, but the heart of the village will remain intact. Helena covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed with emotion. I don't know what to say. Thank you seems inadequate. You don't need to thank me, Miguel said, stepping closer. I did it as much for myself as for Santa Clara, for the person I want to be. Helena looked up at him, tears still shimmering in her eyes. And who is that? Someone worthy of his family, Miguel said softly. Someone who honors his mother's memory. Someone who might someday deserve your respect. You already have it, Helena whispered. They stood looking at each other, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. Then Lucas's voice broke the moment. Miguel, you're back! The boy raced into the kitchen and threw his arms around Miguel's waist. Did you save our village? Did the bad guys lose? Miguel laughed, ruffling Lucas's hair. Yes to both questions. Santa Clara is safe. I knew you could do it, Lucas said with complete confidence. You're a good guy now, not a bad guy anymore. Helena smiled at her son's simple assessment. Lucas, why don't you go finish your homework while Miguel and I talk? Once Lucas had left, an awkward silence fell between them. What happens now? Helena asked finally. Our contract still has months remaining, but... Forget the contract, Miguel interrupted. It was wrong from the beginning. You're not my employee, Helena, you're my family. Helena nodded slowly. Yes, I am, but that doesn't tell me what happens next. Miguel took a deep breath. That depends on you, on what you want. What I want, Helena repeated. You could go back to Santa Clara, Miguel said. Your house is safe now. Lucas could return to his school, be with his friends, or, Helena prompted when he hesitated. Or, you could stay here, Miguel said quietly. Both of you. Not as my housekeeper, but as my family. As, he paused, struggling to find the right words, as whatever we might become to each other. Helena's eyes widened. Miguel, I know it's complicated, he rushed on. I know we're still getting to know each other, but these past weeks with you and Lucas, they've changed me, reminded me of who I was meant to be. Helena stepped closer, her eyes searching his. And who were you meant to be, Miguel? Someone capable of love, he answered honestly. Someone who puts family first. Someone more like my mother than my uncle. Helena reached up and touched his face gently. I've seen that person emerging more and more each day. Miguel covered her hand with his own. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. 20 years of being Victor's protege won't disappear overnight, but I want to try. For Lucas, for you, for us, Helena corrected softly. She rose on tiptoe and kissed him gently, a tentative promise of what might grow between them. Miguel pulled her closer, feeling as though a missing piece of himself had finally been found. A giggle from the doorway broke them apart. Lucas stood there, grinning widely. Does this mean we're staying? He asked hopefully. Helena looked up at Miguel, then back to her son. Would you like that, Lucas? The boy nodded enthusiastically. Yes. Miguel has a pool and a huge library, and he needs us to teach him how to bake cookies and play baseball and all the stuff his uncle never showed him. Miguel laughed, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He's right. I have a lot to learn. We all do, Helena said, taking his hand. But we have time now. We have a future. 6 months later, the grand opening of the Santa Clara Heritage Resort was attended by hundreds of guests. The old village center had been beautifully restored, with the school, now renamed the Maria Duarte Community Education Center, as its crown jewel. Helena stood beside Miguel as he cut the ribbon, Lucas bouncing excitedly between them. The residents of Santa Clara, once suspicious of Miguel Alencar, now watched with cautious optimism as their village began a new chapter. Victor had made good on his threat to sell his shares, but true to his word, Miguel had found investors who shared his new vision for the company. The Alencar Group was changing, becoming something that honored profit and people equally. That night, after the celebrations, Miguel, Helena, and Lucas walked through the quiet village. They stopped at the small blue house where Helena had grown up. "Do you miss living here?" Miguel asked her. Helena considered the question. "Sometimes. It holds so many memories, but home isn't really about a place, is it? It's about the people you love." "And who do you love, Helena Duarte?" Miguel asked softly. Helena smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "A man who bought me at an auction but gave me my freedom. A man who found his heart when he thought it was lost forever." "And don't forget me," Lucas chimed in, making them both laugh. "Never," Miguel promised, pulling the boy close. "Family sticks together, always." As they walked back toward their car, Miguel looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky. Somewhere up there, he liked to think, his mother and sister were watching, smiling, proud of the family that had found its way back together, despite everything that had tried to tear it apart. The heart that had once been auctioned now belonged exactly where it was meant to be, with the people who had taught Miguel how to use it again.